Hey y'all, Father Jim Haney from St. Paul's in the Plains Episcopal Church in Lubbock, Texas. I'm recording this on Sunday the 26th, and Memorial Day weekend, and we have three holidays coming up this week. Of course, in our national calendar, tomorrow, Monday, is Memorial Day. It'll be yesterday for you all by the time this posts. But we give thanks for those who served our country and died to defend our liberties, and that's a wonderful holiday. But there are two more wonderful holidays that just happened to come up this week as well. In fact, they're on back-to-back days, and that is actually a very rare thing. On the 30th, on Thursday the 30th, we have the Feast of the Ascension, and on Friday the 31st, we have the Feast of the Visitation. Now, these are church holidays, and what are they all about? Well, they very rarely come back-to-back like this because one always falls on May 31st, but one floats around based on the date of Easter. And so it's extremely rare that they would be on back-to-back days like this. The Feast of the Ascension is always the 40th day after Easter. What are these holidays about? Well, they actually are about Jesus, and they're about Jesus at kind of the extreme opposite ends of the spectrum of his life amongst us as a human being. The Feast of the Visitation recalls the events in the first chapter of Luke after Mary becomes pregnant, after she conceives Jesus. She goes and visits her kinswoman Elizabeth. Elizabeth at that time is the mother of John the Baptist, and he also is in utero. And there's that wonderful scene in the first chapter of Luke when John the Baptist in utero recognizes the presence of Jesus in Mary's womb, and John the Baptist leaps for joy, and Elizabeth and Mary celebrate all the things that God is doing through these babies, especially through Jesus. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, on Ascension Day, we always remember that 40 days after his resurrection, Jesus ascends into heaven. This is recounted in the 24th chapter of Luke's Gospel, as well as the first chapter of the book of Acts. Now, we believe as Christians that Jesus is a real human, and yet somehow he is also God, God with us, Emmanuel, God dwelling in a human body, in a human life. And it's not a 50-50 deal that Jesus is half God and half human. It's not even 60-40 or 70-30. It is 100-100. Somehow Jesus is fully a real human being, and yet somehow he is also fully God amongst us. And what I love about Ascension Day and the Visitation being bookended like this, actually they're flipped on the calendar, but they give us a wonderful sense of Jesus' presence amongst us. Even before he's born, John the Baptist, Mary, Elizabeth recognize that God is something special. God is somehow specially present in this human life. And also at the other end, 40 days after his resurrection, Jesus takes our human life up into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father, not as some disembodied spirit, but as a human being. And that's an amazing thing to contemplate, that Jesus knows what our human life is all about, that he knows and has experienced what we experience. And so he can be the perfect high priest, as the book of Hebrews says. He knows our weaknesses, and he also can make perfect prayer and intercession for us. And he also carries something else with him. There's a wonderful statement that there's only one human-made thing in heaven, and that is the wounds that the ascended Jesus bears in heaven. The only man-made thing in heaven is the wounds on Jesus's body. And that's a wonderful thing too. Jesus has been through all the pain of a human life. He's even been through death itself, and yet he's come out the other side. And where he is, he promises we also can be one day. And so between the Feast of the Visitation on the 31st and the Ascension on the 30th, we have the full range of Jesus' experienced as Emmanuel, God with us. So give thanks for our Lord, his presence amongst us, and the wonderful gifts that he brings us. Have a blessed week.